Hey guys, Sydney here. So in the last video, we looked at how we can add an item to the cart, but we were just adding the root item to the cart. So I figured that in this video, why don't we take this project a step further and look at how we can add different variations of the same product to the cart. Like let's say we can add a size variation. So let's say we can add a small, for example, if we are dealing with clothing, we can do the small, medium, or large size. Or if we are dealing with clothing, also we can do the color, so different colors of the clothing. So inside our project, I went ahead and started a React app because implementing this with Django just wasn't just working out for me. So I tried to do it with React because Django had just some limitations. So in here, as you can see, I have two terminals open. One is for the Django server and another one is for the React app. And in development, we're just keeping them both separate, but we'll run the build command to have the React app being hosted on the Django server. So if you can just test this out. So this is our React app. We can go ahead and log in. So let me log in here. On correct password, and if we log in now, we are logged in because you see we can log out. And if you want me to do a video for authentication using React, you can also let me know in the comment section below. So to get started, add product variations, we'll need two models for this. So one is the variation model, which will specify the different variations that will be linked to our specific products, like let's say for the size, color, and those. And then we'll have an item variation model, which will be a link to the specific variation. So for example, if for size we can have small, medium, and large, so those are the values that will correspond to that specific variation. So without further ado, let's go ahead and create those models. So I'll create a model, call it a variation, and it will be a models.model. So models.model. Make sure I spell that right. So in here, in the variation, we can specify fields such as the name of the variation. So name, which is just going to be a models dot character field, so a character field, and we can pass in the max length. So maximum length of that field, we can say, let's say 200 for now. And since our variation is linked to a specific item, we'll need to have that specific item. So we grab that item here and set it to a foreign key to that item model. So a foreign key to the item and specify an onDelete. So onDelete, we just say it is models.cascade, like that. And we can go ahead and define a string method. So define underscore str double underscore text in self, then it just returns self.name. So self.name, like that. So we have all that set up. We can just go ahead and save that to get it formatted correctly. So we have our variation model. So we can go ahead and create the item variation model. And so I'll rename this to item variation, which is just going to be model. And in here we'll need a variation, a foreign key to that specific variation. So the variation will be a foreign key to the variation model. So variation there, and onDelete still remains the same. Then in here we'll specify the value of that specific variation. So let's say small, large, or medium. So a value which will also be a character field, and we can also add an attachment field. So attachment, which can be a file field or an image field. So I'll just use an image field. So models.image field, and we can say upload to, so upload underscore to, which is just going to be static / images, because you have that static folder in there. So we can just go ahead and save and return self.value there. So we can also add some bit of constraining in here, and we can go ahead and add a class meta there. So class meta, and we want to define a unique together. So unique underscore together, and set it to a tuple. So this is also going to be a tuple, and in there we specify that the variation needs to be unique with the value, so that we have specific values for specific variation. So we can go ahead and copy that also for the variation model. So I can paste it there, and in there we specify the item and the name of that variation, so that we don't have some duplicates. So if we can save that and everything looks good, we can go ahead and make those migration. So this needs to be static images like that. And so if we go ahead and stop the server there, and we can run, we can make those migrations, then migrate and run the server. So that needs to be server, not server. So server like that. So we can go ahead and bring these models into the admin. So inside our admin, we can import the item, variation, and the variation model. So all of them, we have them there, and we can specify the item variation as an inline model field. So let's start by creating the item variation admin first. So item variation admin is just going to be an admin dot model admin, and in here we can specify list display. So list display, and if we go back to the model for the item variation, we can display the value, the variation, and the attachment. So we can copy that, come here, paste it there, so like that, put commas at the end there, and that looks good. We can add a search field. So search fields, set it to a list, and we might just want to search by the value there. So we can search by the value, and we can add list filter. So this is list filter, and set it to a list there, so we can filter by the variation. And since the variation is also linked to the item, we can filter by that specific item. So variation _ item to get to that item. So we have that. We can specify the inline admin model. So class item variation inline admin, that this is going to be admin.tabular inline, and then in there we can specify the model as being the item variation. So item variation there, and extra as just one, so that we have an extra row in the form sets. We can save that, and we can register the item variation. So register the item variation, make sure we imported them so we can register the item variation using the item variation admin. Paste it there, and we can go ahead and create the variation admin. So as variation admin, which is also going to be a model admin. So admin dot model admin, and in there we can specify a list display. So paste that there, and if we go back to the model, the variation, we can display the item and the name of that. So go back to the admin. This is going to be the item, then the name of that variation. So we can cut that. We can also add search fields. So search field, we might want to search by the item. Yeah, we might just want to search by the item, and filter by the name. So list filter underscore filter, and we might just want to filter by the name of that specific variation. So I can type that in, and search fields list filter looks good. And unident, that is just there, so that takes care of that error. We can save that. Then we want to add this inline admin to the variation, so we can specify an inlines. So inlines, it is just going to be the item variation inline admin. So paste that there, and we can register the variation model using the variation admin. So paste it there, yeah, like that. So we can go ahead and save everything, and if we come back and refresh, we're getting a lot of errors there. So we can go ahead and run the server to see if we're still getting those errors, and everything looks good. If you can go to the admin and check that out, so 127/admin, so admin there, and if we log into the admin, we see we have all our models, items. We currently have we have our items there. If we check the chart, it is there. So we can go back to the variations, and in here we can add a variation. So specify the item as that, the name of the variation, let's just say color, and then the value of that variation. And I'm just noticing that, okay, let's just key in the value of that. We can have red shirt, then we can choose a file. So a red shirt like that, add that there, add a blue shirt, choose a file, then we have our blue shirt there. We can add another one, which is just black shirts, choose the file, and black, go. So we can save that, and so to get those variations in our React app, we'll need to create some serializers so that we can fetch that data. So inside the root project URL, root project directory, I'll create a new folder and call it API. And inside API, I'm going to create some files. So one is serializers, so serializers.py. Then inside there, I'm also going to create a views.py, so views.py. and a URLs. So urls.py, like that. So we have those views, and make sure you have REST framework installed. So we can just start by saying from REST framework. So REST underscore framework, we need to import the serializers, and we need our models for this. So from catalog dot models, so catalog dot models, we need to import. We can also just say from catalog dot models import star, but I'll import the individual models. So okay, let me just close that. We have the order, the item, the order item, the item variation, and the variation. So we can save that. And so inside here, if we just go back, this is our homepage. We want to fetch all our products that are in our database. So to do that, we'll need to create a serializer for that. So you can just say this is the item list. So item, just call it the item serializer. So serializer that, which is serializers dot, it is a model serializer, and in here we can specify class meta, and our model is the item, and the field, so fields, spell that correctly, fields, and this is going to be a list. So the first item in that list is the ID. Make sure you don't forget that. If we go back to our models, and for the item we want to return basically all this, so the price, the discount price, slug, everything that is defined in that item. So we can copy that back into our serializers. We can paste all that there, and make sure we put them into strings. So if we specify that and put commas at the end, so we have all that there. And inside our views in the API, we need to also import those models and the serializers. So from dot serializers, so serializers, we need to import the item serializer. So the item serializers, if you can just go back and see that, yeah, we have that item serializer there. And we also need some views from serializers. So from REST framework, so from REST underscore framework dot generics, we can import the list view. So import the API list view, the retrieve API view. So we'll need those for now, and we can just import the generic API view. So from REST framework dot views, we can import the API view. That we're not going to use that for now. We can just keep it there. So class item, so item list view is going to inherit from the list API view, and in here we need to specify the permission classes. So permission underscore classes, this is going to be a tuple, and we need to import those permissions. So from REST underscore framework dot permissions, we need to import some of them. So we need the user to be authenticated, and we need the allow any. So for this, we'll just allow any. So allow any there, throw in allow any there. Then the serializer class, so serializer underscore class. It is going to be our item serializer. So item serializer there, and our query set. So query set is going to be item, and we didn't import the models. So from catalog.models, you can just come and get that and paste it there. So from catalog.models, under our model is going to be the item model. So inside our URLs, we can import from Django. So from Django.urls, we need to import the path function, and we specify the URL patterns as a list, the path, and the first we need it to go to product list, so that will fetch all the list inside all the products inside our database, and we need to also bring in the views. So from views we can import the item list view. So item list view like that, and you can copy that, paste it there, and say dot as underscore view. It is a class based view, and we can give it a name of, let's say, product dash list, like that. So we have all the URLs set up, and inside our root URLs, so inside our root URLs, we need to add another path. So path to, so any path that goes to /API, we need to include the API.url. So we can include and API.urls, like that. So everything looks fine, and we can close those. The URLs can stay inside our views. We have our query set, and our query set should be item.objects.all. Sorry about that, guys, and make sure you've gotten that right. So our query set should be item.objects.all and not item. So if we come back and go to 127/API/product list, we should get a fetch of those items, and method object is not iterable, and so that is coming from and we are still getting this error because inside our serializers we specified the wrong field. So if we go back to our models, those fields are not specified there, so you can just look at others. So everything looks fine. If we go back to API/product list, then we see we are fetching the product list of all our products in our database. So we can go back, we can come back here, and inside our React app, we need to create a URL that will fetch that product list. So you can just go ahead and close admin models. We are not using some views, we are not using the views right now. So you can go ahead and close the catalog app and open our React app. So inside test source folder, and inside the components folder, I have some basic components set up. We have our home, we have the layout, which is the root component where all the components are inheriting from. Then we have our product detail and our home. Our home URL, it is our home component. It is basically where we want to fetch or to list all our items. So inside here, we can go back to the source folder, and So inside the source folder we have our constants.js, and inside here I've specified just some URLs so that we don't type anything out. So we have constant home, and we can call this localhost. So that is localhost, and that is just our localhost. And we have our API, which is /API. And if we just go back, we saw that this is our localhost /API /product list. So our product list URL, so we can export a constant. So export const, and we can call that the product list URL, and it is just going to be the endpoint. So we can output that dynamically and say that is the endpoint, and we can just add product dash list, because that is the URL that is specified inside our URLs. So we can save that. That looks good. So inside our home, basically we want to return an item list, and I'll be using Semantic UI React. So you can just go ahead and type Semantic UI React. So Semantic UI React, we can open that up. So if you go to react.semantic.ui.com, we want to import some components. So we can import the item, and basically what we'll need is an item list. So we can go with some like this, and we can do one like this which has some additional information. So if you click to try it, and we will need an item group. So that item group there, we can copy it, and so inside our home, instead of returning that div, we want to return an item group, and we can change this to a React app. So if we type in here React and select that, so that we also need to import those components because we're getting that error there. If we go back to the top, and we'll need that, so you can copy that, bring it at the top, and right below that we paste those components there. And so if we just make that looks like that, if we come back and see paragraph is defined, is not defined, so we need to get rid of that paragraph there and just type in something, so description there, and we'll need to do it for all those. So description there and right here, so we can also type description there. And if we come back and refresh, and it seems to be taking its time to load there, yeah, but we see we are getting those items. So we can make use of the container if we just import it. So we can import the container there, so container, and instead of returning an item group, we can return a container. So container like that, and wrap that container around the entire item group. So paste that there, and if we come back and refresh, so we see we have that, and it looks like there's some information missing there on the top, and we can say that the container is text, so that brings just everything in. And if we come back, everything looks a little bit centered. And for the container, we might just add a style, So style and specify margin top as, let's say, 5 a.m. And if we come and refresh that, now we are getting everything, and we'll need only one of those so that we can loop through everything. But before that, we need to create a method that will fetch those items in our database. So to do that, under the component, we can add a handle fetch items method. So handle fetch items method, which just takes in no parameters, and it will, so inside there we can use the fetch API, or for this case I'll be using Axios, so we can import Axios. So just say import Axios from Axios, so Axios from Axios, like that, and in there we can just call Axios.get, so Axios.get, and the URL we are going to get from it is from our constant, which is the product list URL. So if you come back here and product list URL, you can import it automatically there. So we'll be using we will get from the product list URL, and this gives us a response. So then with the response, we can say this dot set states, and inside our states we can go ahead and create the states. So states state, and inside the state we can have a loading, which is just false initially, so false, and we can have an error, which is null in the beginning, and we can have our data, which is just an empty array. So data there, which is an empty array, we can save that, and so with our response we can set the state and say the data is our response dot data there, and we can say loading as false because we already have the data, and before we fetch that data we can say this dot set state, and inside here we can just say loading to be true. That is where we'll start to output the loader, and so we can add a catch if we get any error. So dot catch there with the error, and we can set the states. So this dot set state, and inside there we can set the state of the error to that error, and we can also set loading as false. So loading false there. We can save that, and that looks good. And this handle fetch items is what we want to call every time the component mounts. So inside here we can specify the component did mount method, and in there we can call this dot handle fetch items, save that, and if we come back, home is not defined, line 5. So we are exporting it, and okay, if we come back and refresh, we are still getting the error, and the error is coming from constants, not home. So if we come back to constants and we rename that to localhost, not home, so we can just paste that there and everything should look fine. So when we get the data, we might just want to console it out to see how it looks like. So with the response, we can say console.log response.data, see how it looks like. So response.data there, data I can't type today. So we can console it out, and if we come back and refresh and hit F12 to open the developer menu there, or the developer tools, we have an array with 3 objects, and we see we are getting our items there. We have the category, the discount price, the ID, the price of that object, and basically everything. So what we need to do is, inside our home, we'll need only one of these items and look through those items. So I can get rid of that, and I'll keep the middle one. And so that, and if we save everything, and if we just look at our data, so we have our data, and if we have the data, we can return that element. So to access the data, we need to get it from the state. So above the return set statement, we can say const our data, which comes from this dot state, which comes from the state. And so now we have our data, and just below the container, we can say that if we have that data, so data and end, we want to return that item group there, and inside data we can say data dot map. For each item, we want to return an item group, so we return an item group. So if I can just copy that or cut it and paste it there. So for each item, we return an item group. So if we come back and refresh, now we see we are getting 3 items there, and those are the 3 items in our database, and we are getting this error, each unique. We need to add a key, so that comes from home line 35. So line 35 in here, we just say that the key is item.id. So item.id, and in here we can specify that to be, this should be the image of that item. So source should be our item.image. I believe that is what we call it. And my neighbor tutorial, we can let that to be the title. So item.title, like that. The cinema, we can, if we just go back, and for the button, we can just probably get rid of it, because we'll be adding to cart in a different view. And the description, you can put the description there. So that should be item.description, and the limited can just do as item.label there, and IFC cinema, we can do the price. So you can add a $sign in front of that and say that is the item dot, let's just output the discount price. So discount price, like that. And if we save everything and come and take a look, so let's refresh that, and we are getting our items showing there, and the images are not showing. So, and also the label, if we just come and check that out, so the label is D, which is danger, and we might just want it to be the category. So if we change that to category and come back and refresh that, and we are getting the category that is stored in the database. So we can come back to our serializer, and for the category we can define a method that gets that category. So we can define a serializer method field. So the category is going to be a serializers. So serializers dot serializer method field, and in here we can define the get category. If we check the server, everything seems to be fine, and define get category, which just takes in self and the object, and what we want to return is object dot get category display. So get category underscore display, like that, and push the parentheses at the end there. Save everything, and if we come back and reload, and we are getting a server internal error. So if we just come back and check that, so if I maximize that and gets as no object get category, so item serializer object has no attribute get category, and the error, if we just go back and take a look, and it is just with the method, so we can just tap that method back in, and if we come back and refresh, we should fetch those products there. So product list connection refused. If we go back, the server is running. Let's refresh again. And now we have the category of that product displaying there. If we just check why the images are not displaying, and it might be if we just check our static, and we have those images in there. If we go to our root URLs, so inside our root URLs, we have the configurations for the media and the static URL, and if we go to our settings, then we should have the same. So we have our static all there, static files directories as being static there, and for our models, okay, so the products were the images were not displaying. It is just because I was using the wrong database. So I went ahead and deleted my database, and if you still get the same error, you can just go ahead and delete the migration folder and make migrations for the catalog app, and I added another new product. So if we just go ahead and refresh, you see we are getting that single product there. And as a last touch to this video, we can make this a little more fancier by outputting the loader component. So if you go back to Semantic UI React and search for the loader, and what you want is maybe something like this. So if we click to try it, then we want the bottom one there. So if you copy that and go back to home, so if we have our data, meaning we already have our data, so before we get the data, we want to output the loader. So just above the data, and we want to paste that there, and we need to import segment, dimmer, and loader. So we can import the segment there. So segment, actually let's just grab this. So segment, dimmer, and loader, copy that. And if we go back, we can paste them there. So we need to grab loading. So loading and error. So error from the state, and we can just say if loading. So if we are loading the data, so loading, you can say loading and we can output that segment and the dimmer there. Get rid of that and save everything. And for the error, we can look at how we can output an error message. So and just search for the message component, and let's find a negative error or a negative message. So something like this. If we copy that, and we can copy that. So all we need to import is the message. So we can copy that, go back, and to the top we can import the message. So message here, we have the message imported. And if we have an error, so error, and we want to display that there. So we are getting an error, and if we just save everything, it should do it. So we have an error. There are some errors with your submission, and for the list there, we can call json.stringify our error. So we have our error stringified there, and if we come back and refresh, image has already been declared. So we can go back, and we are declaring the image twice there, so we can get rid of the bottom one there. And if we go back now, we need to log in. So let's just log in there, and we saw a bit of a loader display there for a second. So if we can just refresh, we saw that we are loading, meaning we're fetching the data, and we did not get any errors there. So in the next video, we look at how we can click to this title and navigate to the detail page of this product, and that is where we look at how to add the variations of this product to the cart. So if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, subscribe and hit that notification bell to get more notifications when I drop videos like this. So I'll see you in the next